Hi, I'm Joe McCord. I'm Deputy Commander of the PDK Senior Squadron of the Civil Air Patrol. Behind us is our 3-year-old Cessna 182. It comes fully equipped with the G1000 system and other specialty radios that we need for our mission. I flew in the Air Force and was commissioned out of University of Georgia. Commissioned as a second lieutenant and went in 1971. I flew F-4s for 6 years and then left the service. After a while, after leaving the service, I rented airplanes and even owned a few airplanes along the way, and decided that I needed to get more involved in some sort of flying organization. I kind of really missed the organization of the Air Force, and came here to Peace Treaty Cab, found the Senior Squadron, and I joined it in 2012. With Civil Air Patrol, we have 3 missions. One is the Cadet Corps, and I kind of liken it to the Air Force equivalent of the Boy Scouts. But in the Cadet Corps, you get training as well as experience in flying. We also give orientation rides to Junior ROTC and Air Force ROTC. We have, so that's one mission, the Cadet Corps. Second mission is aerospace education, and that's where we speak publicly to civic groups, to schools, and try to heighten their interest in aerospace. With that, the Civil Air Patrol has created its own STEM program, and if a teacher would like to become a teacher member of the Civil Air Patrol, they pay a one-time fee of $35, and we then supply them with course curriculum, all associated with aerospace, and materials to teach those classes. The third mission is emergency services, and the emergency services could be anything from rescue situation, search and rescue. It could be working with FEMA or in our case GEMA in a disaster situation. We do airborne photography for them, and other missions associated with disaster relief. We could take supplies in, we could even transport medical staff. The Civil Air Patrol is the auxiliary of the Air Force, and so you can kind of consider us a recruiting arm for the Air Force. About 10% of the cadets at the Air Force Academy were once in the Civil Air Patrol ranks. It gives you exposure. Because of that exposure to aviation, there are opportunities to do orientation flights, not only in a powered aircraft, but also in a glider aircraft as well. And along with that, you can consider it somewhat of a recruiting tool. One of the things presently, as you may know, that there are a lot of problems with the pilot shortage that impacts the military as well as the airlines. And the pilot shortage in the Air Force is I have heard estimates of more than 2,000 pilots now. So the opportunity to get orientation in the Cadet Corps, and then perhaps going and getting that interest in aviation is a big recruiting tool for them. Gives them an opportunity of people that have been, I don't want to say screened, but of cadets that have that interest in aviation, and perhaps they will go on to a university that has an Air Force ROTC program. And through the Air Force ROTC program, provided you meet the physical requirements, you may be able to be selected for a pilot training slot.
The Sling Pilot Academy's new program is already training tomorrow's airline pilots in picturesque Southern California. We have cockpit and class assignments ready now to get you started on the career you've dreamed of.
My name is Mike Mullett. I'm the PDK Senior Squadron Commander. And I got into the Civil Air Patrol in 2009 in Tucson, Arizona, transferred to PDK in 2010. A lot different flying between desert flying and flying in Georgia, but flying nonetheless is fun and exciting. And as Joe was mentioning, we have three primary or core functions: the emergency services, cadet services, and aerospace education. And one of the other things that we do in aerospace education is not only educate the senior members and the rest of the cadre, but we also support air shows around the country. And one of the neat things is that if the cadets work hard and get selected, they can actually go to EAA or Air Venture in Oshkosh every year and do marshaling and ground support at Air Venture. We saw a number of cadets up there, and the Civil Air Patrol also had a tent and a display up there. Normally they have an aircraft on display, static display, but this year there was a problem getting the airplane there, so no airplane, but the Civil Air Patrol nonetheless had squadron support there to recruit cadets and senior members into the Civil Air Patrol. On a exercise, a search and rescue mission per se, I got a call this morning, or a text as an emergency notification, wanting to know if we had an aircrew available and ready to fly, which I responded that we did. So we were told then to go to the airport and stand by for further instructions. We then came to the airport, got the airplane ready, we did our ground check, and stood by for dispatch. So there's actual Air Force AFRCC mission assigned for that particular ELT that's going off. And normally what happens is a lot of airliners will be flying over a location and hearing that signal, and what they'll do is then call in to the FAA towers or center and report an ELT going off that eventually makes its way to AFRCC in Tyndall Air Force Base, and Tyndall Air Force Base will then determine which wing needs to stand up and get ready to do a search for that ELT. So I normally fly on an ELT mission with 2 people, sometimes 3 people. Not necessary to fly with 3 people. We can also fly in instrument conditions. And what that means is we don't need to see the ground, we just need to be able to zero in on the location, the latitude and longitude. Once we determine the lat long for that signal, we'll then, through our specialized radio, broadcast that lat and long to a ground team who has equipment to search that signal more appropriately on the ground. In the aircraft, when we dispatch to a mission, normally the crew that stands up is the mission pilot in the left seat, mission operator, who I relate to as the navigator communicator, and then the scanner or the airborne photography in the left rear seat. Each one of those positions is vital to the success of the mission, and sometimes it can get very complicated and very busy in the air, trying to communicate with not only air traffic control, but other aircraft potentially in the area, and also the ground team. Everybody needs to do their part, be familiar, be trained, and competent in those positions. The Air Force is actually the entity, the government entity that buys our aircraft and then transfers ownership to the Civil Air Patrol, Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. And the other thing they do, which is just really awesome, is provide support for the maintenance of the aircraft. And what you have to do in order to be a maintainer for our aircraft is submit basically a resume of who you are, what your qualifications are, what your insurance coverage, is. Submit that all to headquarters at Maxwell Air Force Base, and then they award maintenance contracts to individual maintenance shops. One of the nice things is that we can, as pilots, to keep our proficiency up, can basically rent the aircraft or do a self-funded mission to keep our proficiencies up. This airplane is a G1000 system, which is the avionics suite in the airplane, and for flying for an hour in this airplane is roughly about $100 an hour, and that covers both the maintenance fee and replacing the fuel that you burn. As Joe had mentioned, this is an all-volunteer group. One of the nice things about all-volunteer group is that every year we take an annual flight review, and the CFI, CFII by regulation does not charge us for that. If we go within that year time frame, we still maintain our qualifications and the Air Force will pay for it. If you let your qualification lapse, you will then have to pay for that flight time. But again, the flight instructor does not charge for his time and his signature on the line that you have completed an annual flight review. You can actually go to the website gocivilairpatrol.com. About halfway down on the page, it'll ask you, are you a senior member or a junior member? You select accordingly, and then to the right of that, there's an area for your zip code. Put that zip code in there and hit go, and it will locate within, I believe, a 25 nautical mile radius all these squadrons around you and provide their contact information, the time and place that they meet.